Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining TheBrain 202. My name is Matt Caton, and I'm very excited today to share with you tips and tricks of the brain software that go beyond the basic. We're assuming today that everyone joining the call knows how to use the brain or has the brain installed and has an existing brain database. If you haven't already, I encourage you to join a Brain 101 class. We have those every Friday, and the Brain 101 covers creating thoughts, adding files and documents and notes and web pages, and then syncing your brain to the cloud so you can access your brain from multiple devices. So all the basics that you know to get started. That's the Brain 101. The Brain 202 is about editing an existing brain and expanding your capabilities of the software. So feel free to challenge us in the GoToMeeting question panel. My friend and colleague Chase Ingersoll is joining me today. He's going to be answering all of the questions on the GoToMeeting chat panel, as well as joining me for QA at the end of the demo after I get through all the features that I'm excited to share with you. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I've got an existing brain open on my screen right now. And this is actually a sample brain that you can download from our website. If I pull up thebrain.com, and I often share a sample brain on my Brain 101 calls, but it's already been tweaked and edited. This one, I actually went in and sort of messed things up a little. So I can go in and really start tweaking and editing and cleaning up areas of the brain that have become unkept, or I'm just adding content, and now it's time for some spring cleaning. So the brain that I'm demoing or I'm starting with today is a variation of, if you go onto our website and go down to applications, there are videos that you can watch on us using the brain in different scenarios, and there are sample brains that can be downloaded. And this sample brain, one brain for everything, is the basic brain that I am starting with today. And we'll talk a little bit more about importing and exporting. I downloaded the BRZ and imported that to start this brain. We'll talk about that in detail today, creating BRZs and what can be done with them. So here I am running the brain, and this brain is called My Brain, and it is a placeholder for my personal goals, all of the work jobs that I'm working on with clients, with my marketing department, sales teams, and so forth. And then over here, I have all of my personal life items. And notice there's a lot of content here. I've got friends, I've got family members, I've got hobbies that I'm interested in, projects that I'm working on, and so forth. And this has sort of become a little bit unkept. It's time to tidy things up. Now, with the brain, there's a very personal choice that needs to be made when you're creating thoughts and adding content. Where does that information go? Should that information be in a note, in a file attachment? Should it be a thought or a thought type or a thought tag, and so forth? A lot of personal choices, but what's most important to keep in mind is you can always go back and change and modify how your thoughts are connected, where they are connected in the brain, what type of thought it is, or what type of attachment or content you have. And that's what we're going to be doing now. Everything in my life is considered, it's linked to my personal life. So I could potentially have one thought linked to a million different child thoughts, every different topic I'm thinking about or document that I'm working on. And of course, that wouldn't be very, very beneficial to me organizational wise to access that content in the future. So I'm gonna start cleaning things up. Let's take a good look at the information I have in front of me. It's, like I said, just many different topics of travel, of hobbies, even my personal banking, friends and family. Let's start there. Let's start with friends and family. I've got a lot of people thoughts. So I'm gonna create a new thought for my family members. And so here is my family thought. And now I can start going through this list. Now I'm seeing the rest of the thoughts that were under personal life as a sibling thought over on the right. And I can go through and find all of my family members. And notice it sort of cleans up the display there. Now that I have a child thought, it doesn't display sibling thoughts any further down below on the screen. So I can click and drag down just a little bit. There's Grandpa Marty, my aunt and uncle, Fred and Martha. I'm just scrolling through my sister, my wife, and got some in-laws coming in. And I think I should have, I might find, oh, there's mom and dad and Spencer. So I definitely have, I think, there's Uncle Chuck, all of the ones that I happened to notice at first. Now they are linked under family. Notice that when I was clicking and dragging, since it's on the screen at the same time, it changed the link from being a sibling thought of family to being a child thought of family. So that's a very, very quick and easy way to create an intervening category and move things underneath. As you're working on projects, you'll notice like, wow, I've got a lot of content under this thought. Let's get everything from the Midwest under the Midwest thought, or let's get everything priority one under a new thought called priority one. You can clean up a brain very, very quickly and easily that way. Also, I think I have all the people in my personal life. So let's go back to that family thought, linked as jump thoughts. So I've got my hobbies and interests down below. Family and friends will be linked as jump thoughts. So let's get my friends in there. Now, another way you can do that, since I can see thoughts on the screen at the same time, here's a good friend of mine, Derek. I can actually drag and drop from the friends category down to Derek and right click and unlink Derek from personal life. So there you can see Derek has moved to a new location in the brain. He's now a child thought of friends rather than falling under personal life. But I've got a great shortcut with you, and I'm going to try to weave in all these shortcuts that I use often. They're fully documented in our brain manual, but in case you didn't read through our manual page by page, here's a really great shortcut. And it allows you to create a dedicated parent thought with simply one drag and drop. And it's done by holding down the shift key. So here is a good friend and neighbor of mine, Miguel. Miguel falls under, or I want him moved under the friends thought. So I'm gonna click and drag Miguel up to friends, and I'm gonna hold down the shift key and release my mouse trigger. Notice in that scenario, Miguel is I didn't have to right click on the link between Miguel and personal life to unlink it. It instantly gave him an exclusive parent, which is the friends thought. So let's do that with a few more. Here's my good friend, Jason. Drag and drop, and I click on shift, and Jason has been moved over. I saw Vince over here. So just a few more. I'm holding down the shift key. One more time, I'll do it without holding down the shift key. There's Travis linking over to friends. But notice Travis is still there under personal life. Sometimes you want a thought to remain where it is. This exclusive parent trick, if I hold down the shift key, it removes all other parents. So if I have multiple parent thoughts for one thought, I hold down the shift key and give it a new parent. Everything else is going to be unlinked, and it's only going to be linked to the one new thought. So that's why we call it exclusive parent. So there I'll unlink Travis from personal. And I saw there's Tom and Chrissy. I'm going to speed things up here. Shift. And there's Harlan. Shift. And Dr. J. Now, Dr. J also falls under, I don't see that I have a medical, but really I've got sort of a category, an area for insurance, banking. Oh, I do have health and fitness. So if I had a medical area underneath my brain, so medical information, that's an instance when I would need Dr. J to fall under both categories. He's a friend of mine, but he's also my dermatologist. So I want him linked in both areas. In this case, I don't see Dr. J anywhere on the screen. You probably are familiar with this feature. but just to be sure, I can drag and drop as if I'm creating a new child thought under medical, and I just start typing in a few letters. There's Dr. J in the existing thought list. I can double click and Dr. J falls under both categories. If I shift clicked under that existing thought, I would move Dr. J exclusively because of that shift key. But here I'm keeping him in both areas, under friends and under medical. And also under medical, I'll move my health and fitness. So again, I'm dragging and dropping. And I thought I saw one insurance under medical. I'll drag that under as well. So that's one way that we can create those intervening thoughts and start cleaning up. Already you notice there's about 20 thoughts missing that were previously here under personal life. So I've started to scratch the surface. The next feature I want to share with you, and I could do that for everything. What's next? So airlines, so travel. I've got a lot of travel information. I could create a travel thought and move everything under there. I kind of like this grouping of thoughts that I have, but it's still terribly unorganized. If I notice tropical vacations, that falls under traveling. There's snorkeling, urban travel. So they're kind of peppered throughout this structure. So what I'm gonna do now to clean this up is start applying thought types. Thought types are another classification of thought categories or thought groupings. And each individual thought in your brain can be assigned to one thought type. That's the key difference between thought types and thought tags. You get one thought type, one category that thought falls under. You can change it at a later date. So you can create thought types for projects you're working on, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and move your thought between those thought types. In that scenario, I would use thought tags. And we'll get to those in just a moment. But there's a lot of flexibility that you can have with thought types, and they add a lot more than just that extra classification. They add organization and sort of an easy way to find content and review data within your brain. I'll show you exactly what I mean. So if I click up here on this icon, activate type, these are all the different thought types that are actually already built into this brain. And actually there's travel. I actually already have one. So you can see travel has a little pineapple icon associated with it. There's the thought type. Thought types are always going to have these rounded edges. Keep that in mind. But I don't have any existing thoughts in this brain that are typed as travel. We're going to change that. I'm going to go back to my personal life. I'm going to right click on airline rewards and change the thought type, so set type, to travel. Notice nothing changed on my screen, but I'm going to show you just in just a moment the benefits of creating thought types. Right click on tropical vacations and change the thought type to travel. Notice that tropical vacations just moved locations, because I can right click on the background and I have my thoughts arranged by thought type. So it's always going to group similar thought types together. So now, rather than wandering around through this cluster of thoughts that I want to keep in this one area, all of my thought types will be located together. So snorkeling, once again, and I can also click on the thought. Let me share a few different ways to type a thought. Snorkeling and diving, I click and I change the thought type. This is the thought properties display to travel. And urban travel, I'm going to click once again and change the thought type to travel. There we go. And now that I have this existing thought type in there, you can see those four thoughts are all within the same area clustered together. I can also create a new thought at any time. So let's say I have a thought called, I want to, what's a good travel destination? I want to go to Antarctica. Did I spell that right? No, I didn't. Antarctica is what I need. There we go, Antarctica. And I can drop down a little menu. It's a little arrow that appears when you're creating new thoughts, and you can get to your existing thought types and tags. And as I'm creating the thought before I hit enter, I say, this is going to be a travel thought. And I hit enter. it creates Antarctica. And notice that it didn't have an icon associated with it, Antarctica. So since I typed it as a travel thought, it applied the travel thought icon. It inherited that icon. If it doesn't have one, it'll inherit the thought types icon. And more importantly, I can go back to my travel thought type. And this is a real key ingredient of thought types, is that I can change the look and feel of all thought groups of thought types. So I want all my travel thoughts to have yellow text and be on a dark blue background. And now when I go back to my personal life thought, I can easily find all of my travel related thoughts. I've got that nice visual cue of the blue background, and typically I already have, as you can see, icons for these, but if they don't have icons, one will be applied to them. I see another person there. So as I'm cleaning up my brain, I'm just going to clean things up. Brendan and Dave and Molly, those are good friends of mine. I'm going to shift click. So now I'm sort of merging a few different features here as we go to clean things up. Next thing I see is about animal adoptions, which is something I care a lot about. I've got my own pets and dog walkers. So let's create a new thought type now. I'm going to click on the thought type icon up above and say pets. So if it already existed, notice I type in the letter P and there's all my probability thought types, project, person, partner, and so forth. So I will be reminded, hey, this thought type already exists, so I don't create a duplicate thought type. So I'll just, again, say pets, and I'm gonna click and open up the thought properties display right off the bat. I want an icon. I have pet dogs, so I'm gonna search for dog. There we go. I got a dog icon, and I'll just give it sort of a nice light brown background. So all of my pet thoughts will have this look and feel to them. And I'm going to apply the pet thought type in a little bit of a different way. Earlier, you saw that I could right click and go in to set the thought type as pets. So that's one option. Now, the letter P becomes before T, travel, so that's why it moved pet up to the first area. It's alphabetical by thought type. Let's find a few more. Dog walkers. Once again, you saw that I could open up the thought properties display and change the thought type that way as well. Now we're getting into a new key ingredient I'd like to introduce, and that's mass selecting thoughts. We're going to use this quite a bit over the next few minutes. I'm going to find all the rest of my pet thoughts. So I've got house repairs. Hopefully I have a few more. There's one, paint sitters. I'm going to control click pet sitter, not paint. I saw paint right above. Pet sitter. I'm going to control and click on pet sitter, and it adds that thought into my selection box. So I'm going to control click on one more thought, vets, control click. I've got two thoughts in my selection box. And now with those two thoughts selected, I can right click. There's a lot of different options here that we're going to take a look at. But for now, I'm going to go down to my thought types and set both of these selected thought types to pets. So really quickly, I just applied that change to those two thoughts. Let's do that to a larger grouping. I see a lot of house repair stuff. So let's get going here. House repair, home repair, ongoing house projects, real estate, technology, expenses and bills. I better create a finance. Trip plans. Now, I'm not going to control click. I'm going to right click on upcoming trip plans and set that thought type to travel. So even when I have thoughts selected, I can still use all the basic functionality of the Plex. I didn't make that change happen to everything that I've selected. To do that, I still need to simply right click over in the selection box. So that's when I'm applying a change to those selected thoughts. Now, if I accidentally select something, so control click on technology, technology has nothing to do, well, sort of. I've got a lot of I'm getting tongue-tied. I have a lot of technology in my house, but regardless, I'm going to put that under hobbies and interests. So I can control click to unselect technology or any thought. Also, I'll share with you that if I didn't say this earlier, if you're on a Mac, this is done with a command click. I should have said that right off the bat for you Mac users. Command click to get into the selection box. So great, we have selected these thoughts. I can right click and set up the thought type for house. I don't have a house thought type. So new type, house. And these 4 thoughts are all typed house. And once again, I can go back to house. Now I can close the selection box, go back to house, click on the icon, select stock icon. We have over 2,000 icons available. Obviously I'll show you the field in just a moment. There's an option for you to upload your own image. So if you want a picture of your own house or a picture of your own pet or what have you, you can certainly do that. But we've got 2,000 thought icons for you to choose from. So I can go by category. Do I have buildings, business and finance, technology, transportation. So a lot of different types of, here we go, real estate. That'll work. So house, there's a picture of a house. Or you can do a search. You can have the brain suggest something for you. The active thought is house. So it searches for the word house. And there, I like that one with the little heart. I'll select that. And once again, I really like applying those colors so things stand out. I'll just give this a nice light sort of pink background since it has that heart on it. And when I go back to personal life, you can start seeing that things are falling into place really, really quickly. Let me just create these last 2 to clean things up. I've got one category for hobbies. So I'll control click all of my hobbies, biking, gardening, my passions, my investments, that'll be something else. There's my medical. I'll put that under finance maybe, kayaking. I'm gonna create a food one later. There's another house one. So see, I'm finding ones that I had missed earlier. That goes to show how difficult they were to see in the earlier structure. There's sports, technology, bills, that'll go under finance, and what I'm reading, so books. So there I've got a whole bunch of thoughts. I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna change those thought types to a new type called hobbies. And hobbies, will give it, I won't apply an icon. Most of these have icons anyhow. I'll just say this is going to be light yellow text on a dark green background. So there are all of my different hobbies, and I can close this. And then I've got, like I said earlier, one more, finance. Oops. Oh, let me just share this with you. I'm going to create a thought called finance. And under finance is going to go, let's go down to the bottom. There's banking, my medical expenses, investments, retirement planning, upcoming bills. That looks good. Now, I don't necessarily want this under a separate category. I want finance to be a thought type. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to select convert to thought type or tag. A really, really great feature. Sometimes you create something as a thought type and then you realize, ooh, that should be a thought tag. Or in this case, I created a native, what we call a native thought, and I wanted it to be a thought type. So I right click, I convert it to a thought type, and just a little confirmation window there. Okay, so now all of these thoughts are thought typed finance. And if I change finance, oh, I definitely need a dollar bill sign here. Oh, it's on suggestion, so there I'll just do a little picture of a dollar and I'll give it a light green background. I really like the colors to make them stand out. And also another trick that I'm going to share with you, I want these 5 child thoughts that you see on the screen here to be connected to personal life, not under finance. I'm actually going to unlink finance from personal life. So they're the finance thought type, but now they're not falling because I moved them, if you recall earlier, from being a sibling thought of finance to a child thought. Now I've changed finance to a thought type. So now I'm going to control click on the gate. Earlier, you saw me control click one thought at a time. You can also control click on a gate. If I control click again, it'll unselect those thoughts. I can also control and click and drag. So if I'm in one of our expanded views, I can control click and drag a square over a grouping of thoughts I see on the screen. So I've selected those thoughts. I'm going to navigate back to personal life. I'm going to right click in the selection area, and I'm going to quickly move 5 thoughts under to being a child thought of a different thought that they're not currently a child of. So I have the option to select or link selection as children, parents, or jumps. I want them to be children of personal life, and there they all are. So you can do more than just applying thought types and tags. We can actually move thoughts around in group, in mass through the brain as well. And this is my last category, which is food. Oh, paint colors, that goes under house. So I right click and select set type to house. And restaurants should fall under food, healthy eating, recipes. There we go. So these 3 thoughts, 1, 2, 3, right click and change that thought type to a new type of food. And maybe I'll leave that with the white background, but I'll give it a sort of dark green text. There we go. And back to personal life. So very quickly, I think I've only been changing these thoughts around for about 10 minutes. We went from that cluster of unstructured groupings of thoughts, all related to me in some way, part of my personal life, to a very, very manageable layout of this information. If I need to get a friend's phone number, I can click on friends and go right to the friend that I'm looking for. And I don't have to go, oh, where's my friend Tom, veterinary, travel, blah, blah, blah. I can go right to that thought. And now my groupings, if I'm looking for a hobby, I know I'm looking for yellow text with a green background. It looks like I've got a lot of green backgrounds going on here. So I'm gonna change one of them. I'm gonna go back to my food thought, and let's give food red text. It's a universal change, so I can come back and modify it anytime. And there I've added a little bit of clarity, so I not everything is blending together. And it's a universal change throughout the brain when you change those thought types and tags. Now these are all clustered together, which makes it really easy to access this information. I could be in another area of my brain completely and still apply these thought types and tags. So they don't have to always appear together. In other words, I've got an area for my work, and I'm just thinking my marketing department. Let's say we've got a new products, new, and one of our new products is pet food. Oh, I could have done it while I was creating the thought, but I can click again, open up the thought type, pets. So great, we've got pet food. That's not my personal pet food that I use for my pets. That's a product that my company is working on. And so that does not appear under my personal life area. The advantage of setting up these thought types and tags, in addition to just viewing and cleaning up your brain, is that I can also run a report. So I can click on reports and I can say, all right, show me a report of all thoughts in this brain. There's quite a few thoughts in this brain, a lot of content. All right, I want to see all of my thought types that are related to pets. Now this is a pretty small brain. I just created this thought type, but there you can see I've got my pet sitter, vets, dog walkers, and so forth, but pet food, which is not currently visible on the screen, shows up in this list. So anytime I apply a thought type to a thought elsewhere in the brain, I can still find all thoughts of that type by running a report. Now, since we were talking about thought types, I'd like to transition into thought tags. Again, the difference between thought types and thought tags is that you can have multiple tags on a thought. I like to think of tags as being attributes to a particular thought. You know, dog walkers that I'm hiring for my pets, those are always going to be dog walkers. So that's the thought type that it falls under. but I may have, let's say I've got several different dog walkers under this category. There's Joe, I'll just use names, Barb, Sarah, and Phil. And those are all dog walkers that I have, so they fall under pets. They're not my pets, obviously. They're related to my activities going on with pets. But regardless, there they all are, but they may have different attributes. Barb's birthday is coming up. She's a good friend of mine. Maybe she falls under friends as well, so I'll add her up there. So I'll add Barb under friends. But also Barb's birthday is coming up. I need to get her something for her birthday. So I'm gonna mark this as an urgent action item under tags. And I know pretty much in every brain I create, I always create a thought type called, or a thought tag called urgent. And urgent could be anything. It could be a project I'm working on, a paper I'm writing. It could be, in this case, an activity that's happening with a friend, or just a task, bills that I have to pay. So that's an urgent action item. She's a good friend. I also have these tags for high cost and low cost. Barb loves my pets. I really want to treat her right. I want to do something great for her birthday. So this is going to be a high cost item. I want to get her something really special. I may have other urgent action items. Let's go back to my personal life area. Maybe I urgently want to check out some new mind mapping technologies that are out there. They're free downloads, so this isn't going to cost me much. It's urgent. I need to check it out. I want to check it out, but it's also going to be low cost because I'm probably going to do some free downloads of some different softwares. So I've applied those multiple tags. Now, also, I should point out, let's go back under here. Let's find one more. Paint colors. We really need to paint the dining room. So I'm going to make this urgent as well. So urgent and high cost. I really want my high cost items to stand out. I want to be able to look at a thought and go, ooh, I know that is a high cost item. I'm going to be spending a lot of money on this project or this investment or whatever it may be. So I'm going to navigate to the high cost tag. There it is. And I can change those icons as well. So by default, it just gets the little tag icon, but here's where I can choose my own file or capture an image off the web. I'll select a file and I'm going to search for money. There we go. So give it a little $sign. And that way I know I can visually see that my paint colors, I'm not cheaping out on this one. I'm going to buy the best quality paint available. It's an urgent action item and it is high cost. So that's a tiny little icon. I could pick something a little bit more visual, but anytime I'm checking out a thought, I can clearly see whether it's going to be high cost, low cost, or whatever my tag is. So it's a really nice visual cue. But once again, we can also use our reports. And at any time, I can sit down and say, all right, what are my urgent action items going on in my life right now? Maybe I just got back from vacation, time to sit down to my brain. What do I have going on? I'm going to run a report and find anything. My own organic brain may have forgotten everything going on in my life. So I'll just refresh. And, oh, I've got it set to pets. So let's just reset. So I want to find all of my urgent action items so I can say tags, show me everything that is urgent. There's even some urgent action items that I didn't even talk about today. Hiring some new folks at my company, doing my mind mapping research, my paint colors, and Barb. Which of these are high cost and which are low cost? So I can add, see, I've got a little plus sign next to urgent. If I add a plus sign next to high cost, it filters it even further. It's showing me my high cost urgent action items. And I can say, be sure to not show me any low cost. So I double click to make that a minus sign. Nothing would be both high cost and low cost. So that might not be a good option. But any urgent action items that need to be reviewed, I'll put the minus sign there. So in other words, you're saying, show me this, All the plus signs are yeses, all the minus signs, no, meaning a thought that does not have that tag associated with it. And there they are. I've got 2 high cost urgent action items. So that is how we can use tags to further clarify information within the brain. Now let's start getting into, since we've touched base of using the collecting thoughts and with the selection box. First, I want to share with you, before we leave this view of the brain, is I took a quick screenshot. It's on my other monitor. Took a quick screenshot of what my brain looks like. Oh, it's toggling through my different pictures that I have. There we go. And here is the image that was my brain when we first started today's webinar. So everything all blended together, hard to find and disseminate all the information under my personal life. And now I get this nice clean view by applying a couple of different styles of organizing, intervening thoughts versus using those thought types to clarify and group content together. Now, of course, I can still right click on the background and change my structure to organize by name, and that I can still clearly find all my vacation thoughts that way, but it's not grouping them together. That, again, is just a personal choice of how you want to organize and navigate through the brain that you create. So let's go ahead now and start talking a little bit more about that selection box. The selection box does so much more than grouping a bunch of thoughts and typing them or tagging them. Or you can also delete. If I know that I want to delete, I'll hold the control key. Let's say all these hobbies, I want to delete them. I can right click. The first step is to forget. As you know, with the brain, first we forget, then we delete. I can delete those thoughts or forget them in mass. If I hold down the shift key, there's that shift key shortcut once again, and I right click, then I'll go straight to delete. So I can quickly delete a large group of thoughts using the selection box as well. In this case, what I want to do is actually copy a grouping of thoughts into another data type. I'm basically exporting some content out of the brain. It's a few different ways that I can do that. First, let's say my personal life branch here. This area of my brain is what I want to copy, maybe into a document to review it, or maybe I want to just copy it into a different brain altogether. I'm going to control click on personal life. And rather than going through and control clicking on one thought at a time, some of these thoughts have child thoughts, so I'd have to activate it and come down and click like this. That would take a lot of time. Now, if I'm just looking for thoughts that are peppered throughout my brain, that's a great option. But if I know that I want this thought and all of its child thoughts, all the way down multiple 5, 10, 20 generations away, I can select just the one thought. I'll start over and control click on personal life, and I go up to edit and come down to select related thoughts. Now I can manipulate the selection box. What am I adding into the selection box? You can run a search and add search results into your selection box. You can run reports and add report results into your selection box. Here I'm saying the current active thought, and we'll just say 8 generations away as a child thought. Let me get these jump thoughts too. So I'll include family and friends as jump thoughts. And I'll also include thought types and tags in my selection. So I'll say okay, and it populates the selection box. I have 81 selected thoughts. That would have taken a long time to have manually selected one at a time. So the first thing I'll share with you is, how do we get this into just a basic text document? Maybe I'm writing a book report, sort of self-reflective, all about me, and I want to include this as an outline of things that I'm going to be studying or discussing. I right click and I copy as a text outline. Notice there's also another option to copy as a text outline with your notes. In this case, I just want the thought names. So I copy as a text outline, copied those 81 thoughts. I'm going to open up, I think I'll just open up Notepad. Easy enough. I can open up Word or Notepad, and I'll create a new note here. I right click in the background and paste. And notice that it retained the structure. of the thought relationships. So under personal life, here's all my different topics. Under dog walkers, there's Barb, Joe, Phil, and Sarah. Barb has an asterisk or pound sign, and basically that means that's an existing thought. Barb already exists. She's a friend, and she falls under dog walkers as well. So that's really cool. It'll put a pound sign over duplicate thoughts or thought that already exists in this list. There's my recipes for beef, chicken, desserts, and pork, and so forth. So it retained all that structure as an outline for my text. Really, really great way to just get an overview of all the thoughts you've created for a project or something you're working on, and get that nice text outline of that content. But let's say I want to actually bring this over into a different brain. I'm going to close this now, and I'm going to right click in the selection box, and I am going to copy these 81 thoughts. So, you know, maybe I want this brain just to be my work brain, only the professional information, all this recreational stuff about sports and kayaking and fishing and so forth. I want that in its own brain. So I copied those thoughts onto my clipboard. I'm going to create a new brain. So File, Create Brain. My new brain is going to be called Just Me. Now, when you create a brain, it randomly selects one of your different wallpapers. This is one of the themes that I have in my brain for one of my brains. So there's the Just Me brain. That's it. There's just one single thought. But remember, I have all those thoughts on my clipboard. I can right click on the background and I can paste. You're pasting everything. You're pasting the icons, the notes, the files, the documents, the thought types and tags. It's all there. So I don't have to recreate the wheel if I decide I want to segment one brain into smaller topic specific brains. I can select the desired thoughts, copy them into the clipboard, or into the selection box rather, right click, copy, come over to another brain and paste. And so now I'll return back to my one brain for it all. I'm now going to start dedicating my personal information to that other brain, the Just Me brain. I don't want it here in this brain. I'm going to rename this to my business brain and take all the personal info out of it. I can right click, and I know that I can safely delete or forget this content. Here I would actually shift, right click, and delete these 81 thoughts. I'm going to use this brain for a little more testing, so I'm not going to delete them right now. But regardless, you can en masse delete all that content, since we've taken it over and we've started incubated a sort of a new brain with this content. And that's where my personal info will go in the future. I'm just checking on my notes. I keep my notes in a separate brain on a separate screen, by the way. Let me get to it. There we go. And so now I actually want to talk about importing into the brain. So rather than exporting out of the brain, one more thing for exporting. Sorry, before I leave this topic, let me share with you that I can also click on File and select Export. And this gives me a different grouping of options. I can still export as a text outline. I can either export the entire brain as a text outline or only the selected area. Items in the selection box. I can also export into the folder structure. And this question comes up from time to time. Hey, if I ever choose to leave the brain software, I've got all my data in there. How do I get it into another application or another format that's usable to me? You can export it to text. You can export it to folders if you want to include all the file attachments and notes and so forth. Every thought becomes a folder, and all of the attachments, Word documents, spreadsheets, notes, web pages will become files within each individual folder. And then for those of you in the know, you can also export to JSON. JSON is a programming language. This might allow you to manipulate your data to import it into a database, something like that. We provide you with this option, but we don't provide any further support, because basically once you export to JSON, there's a whole vast magnitude of features and options that you can do with it, and that's completely up to you. You have to know about JSON in order to use this feature. But if you know about JSON, that feature may excite you. Okay, let's talk about importing. I've got a few different files that deal with kayaks. I'm doing some wood research, and let me actually bring that document up. There are many different import capabilities within the brain. And once again, you can click on File and Import. If I went through each one of these different options, that would be our entire class in an hour. If you want to know more, if you want a sample MM file or XML file or something like that, send a note into support@thebrain.com. We'll send you a sample file and maybe even a brain that exists of what it looks like, the import and the final product, what it looks like in the brain when you import it. But regardless, today I am going to import, since this is one of our more popular questions that come up, can I import from an Excel spreadsheet? And you certainly can. The key ingredient here is that it needs to be a properly formatted Excel spreadsheet. So notice every time I drop down one row, I bump over one column. So this makes hardwoods a child thought of wood species qualifications. And oak is a child thought of hardwood. Red is a child thought of oak. Another child thought of oak is down here, white oak and red oak. These are child thoughts of their parent thought. So one column over and one row up. And also there's some specialty symbols that you can use. I've got a space and then a dash and then an asterisk. That is going to create a bulleted list on the note for this thought. So we'll really check out this fuming option under white oak. Fuming is a way of darkening the color of the wood in your furniture. It's very dangerous. It was done with ammonia in an enclosed tent. And there's a plus sign. That means that is a web page. Great. So we've got a lot of additional data coming in from this properly formatted Excel spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and select this content. I'm just going to select the cells, right click and copy. And now I come into the brain and right click, and I can either paste this as an image. It gives me the option to paste it as wallpaper for the brain. That would be a little crazy. But here we go, paste text outline. The brain recognizes, hey, you've got a properly formatted outline on your clipboard. Do you want to paste that as thoughts and data and content? Yes, I do. I'm going to select that option. And there's my thought, wood species. Remember, I said we'd check it out under hardwoods, oak, and we're going to look at fuming white oak. It fumes well. It's interesting. It's an interesting process to me. That was done with a pipe symbol, as you can see right here. So fumes well, pipe symbol, interesting. So that gives it a thought label, and I've got a web page attached, that plus sign, and here's my bulleted list. So there's really a lot you can do with formatting an existing data in an Excel spreadsheet and importing that data into the brain to populate brain databases very, very quickly. You know, this document could be hundreds or even thousands of thoughts properly formatted, and you could get a brain up and running with your existing data quite rapidly. Now, another question that we get is, hey, I'm using Excel spreadsheets, but it's really just a typical table, very, 5 rows over and 5 rows down, this type of structure. So here we're looking at the weight and qualities of wood for building kayaks. And this is a type of table you might be familiar with. This type of information imports very nicely into a table in your notes section of the brain. So now I'm going to select this type of structure, right click and copy it onto my clipboard. And I am going to look at wood species for kayaking. And this is wood weights. And this is just going to go in as a note. So I right click and I paste, and it gives me this really nicely structured, the same structure as it had before in Excel, but there it is in the notes of the brain. Notes, as you probably know, are formatted using Markdown. If you're not familiar with Markdown, we've got an icon here you can click on. And once again, it opened on another browser. So there's my markdown style guide or sort of cheat sheet, I like to call it, what the button is, what you would type in manually, and what the output is. And down at the bottom, we go into a lot of detail about notes and pipe symbols. So you can have really, really nicely structured data in your notes. And those of you that follow us on Instagram or on Twitter might know that our CEO and chief engineer at TheBrain has been hinting about new features coming, something related to tables. If you've been paying attention to or following Harlan on Twitter, you'll notice that they're working on some really, really great features with tables because we're all really enjoying them very much and getting a lot of great feedback about using tables for structured data in your notes within TheBrain. All right, and then moving on, we've talked a little bit about importing and exporting. I also want to talk about BRZs. So we can export our brain into a file and folder structure. We can export it into and grab copies of brains, paste them into another brain. What if I want to give my brain to you? I want to share my brain I've created with my friends, my colleagues. There are many, many different options. You can sync your brain to the cloud. So I've never synced this brain before, but I can click on this sync icon and it uploads to app.thebrain.com. Oh, I need to change the GUID. This brain was actually given to me by someone else. Great, let's go ahead and do that. I am going to close my, oh here, I'll go to my just me brain and I'll sync that one. So I click on sync and I upload. So this is a brain I created. And there you can see it syncs up to app.thebrain very quickly. Syncing up to app.thebrain.com, it is fast, it is secure. Only I can access this brain right now on app.thebrain.com with my login information. So I would need to click on online and open Thought in Web Client. And since I'm probably already logged in, no, once again, everything is opening on my, my other monitor here. So I'll log in and it's going to take me directly to this brain online through the web interface. Let's say I want to share this brain with you. The first thing I would do is from the desktop application, I click on online and I open up my brain access and sharing. I'm going to check this option, allow public access, and I can send that URL to anyone in the world. They don't need to have the brain installed. They don't need to even have a brain account. They can just click and they'll see exactly like you saw on my screen where the brain is just open in a web browser. And again, they can continue clicking and navigating through the brain, all of its content, all of its notes. There's not a lot of data in this brain, but they can access everything in that brain online without even having a brain license. The next thing I could do is if I know you are a user of the brain, I can type your email address in and you can get a read-only copy of this brain. So I'll just type in my Gmail and invite myself, my Gmail self, to view this brain. And I'll say save and okay. And the email will be sent to this new user. So from my Gmail account, I'll receive an email welcoming me into this brain. When I log into the brain application, I'll click on the, I'll open my brain list and I'll have the option to download the Just Me brain in read-only mode. The only way to collaborate in a brain is by having team brain. That's another topic we're not going to be discussing today, but a collaborative version of the brain is available. Team brain licensing would allow me to share this brain with other members of my team, and everyone can be editors. So we're all collaborating and adding content into the same brain database. And that's that scenario where I just typed in the email address of another person that uses the brain, but doesn't have team brain licensing. They would have a read-only access to that brain on the desktop application, so they don't need to open it on the in the web. Now, let's say I wanted to give you a copy of this brain. I'm more than happy to share this brain with you, but you can change the GUID, sync it, and let it be your own brain. So I would do the following. I would, with this brain open, I'll click on File, and I'm going to back up to Brain Archive. Brain archives are a great way to back up your brain so that you always have a copy of this brain at a specific date and time. So this is what this brain looked like on March 31st of 2022. So I've got a copy of this brain. It's a really, really great thing to keep backups of your brain from time to time. I sync all my brains to the cloud, so I've got that online backup. But just to be safe from time to time, if I'm making a lot of massive edits using that control click feature that we saw earlier, I'll make a BRZ, a brain archive, so that if I really kind of botch things up, well, oh, I deleted thoughts I didn't want to, or move things around, I just want to roll back to the brain that I had last week, I can import a BRZ. And notice there's two options here. You can create a BRZ that anyone can extract. That's how you share your brain with friends and other colleagues that use the brain software. This top option is secure to your account. So you would need to log into the brain software and then extract the BRZ. And you would do that by clicking on File, Import, and you're going to import a BRZ. You can import a BRZ into a new brain or into, if I create another brain and I want to merge two brains together, this is how it's done. I create one brain becomes a BRZ, I open up the other brain and I click and merge this BRZ into, brain A gets merged into brain B by brain A first becoming a BRZ. And I mentioned earlier, changing the GUID. Every thought in your, every thought has its own GUID, but every brain that you create has its own GUID. And that is so, there's many reasons for that. It's basically a unique ID. It's a thumbprint for that brain. So when your brain syncs, as mine is doing right now in the background, it goes to the right account. It knows this brain GUID belongs to this user, and it syncs to the correct account online. And this brain that I've been testing with today, again, was a brain that someone else created. I got a copy of the BRZ, and when I tried to sync, you may have noticed that little message that says, you don't have access to sync this brain. That's because this brain belongs to someone else, the GUID. I can now change the GUID of this brain and sync it under my account. So I am going to close this brain and go back to my brain list. And this all for one is the local brain that I have. I want to change the identity of this brain and sync it under my account. So I'm going to click on the little menu, call it the hamburger button, and go down to Assign Brain New GUID. So yes, I understand I'm giving this brain a new identity, and it's got a new GUID, and that is done. And now I can say, no, where was it go? Oh, what was that brain called? Oh, one, that was it. One brain for it all, there it is. I could have scrolled down through my list, but as you saw, I've got a lot of different brains. I've got dozens and dozens. So there it is, one brain for it all is the brain. It because it has a new identity, it doesn't read, the brain software doesn't read that this brain has ever been opened, so it pushes it back to the bottom of the list. Now that I open it, if I go back to my brain list, it'll be right there at the top. So the most recently opened brains are always going to be at the top. It basically just pushed this thumbnail all the way to the bottom. So I found it by typing in, searching for the brain name. Great, I've got this brain now, one brain for it all. I've given it a new identity, and now I can, if I want, I can sync this brain up to the cloud under my account. So I've got my own copy of one brain for it all. Just a couple of final features that I want to share with you. Let me get back to my brain notes. Note tables we talked about. Context sensitive naming was sort of a feature I wanted to get into today, because this is really, really a more advanced feature of the software, and one that can be very advantageous to those of you with very, very large brain databases. Context sensitive naming, we sometimes refer to it as the comma trick. And it's a really great way to give commonly used names unique identities, unique thought names so that you can find your data when you're doing a search or a report. You can find it very, very easily. Let's say I have a project. I'll actually go under vacations. So under travel, I've got Antarctica. Oh, let's just say Antarctica. Let's say I'm going to be traveling to Antarctica. No, that's the bad one. I'm sorry. I'll just say summer vacation. So under summer vacations, and I'll make this the travel thought type as well. So there we go. Let's say I want a vacation to Zion National Park. And maybe I went to Zion in 2010, and then I loved it so much, I went in 2015, and then again in 2020. I don't want a bunch of thoughts under travel vacations by date, Zion, 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 just having it appear over and over again. I'm sure I could create it this way, 2010, 2020, 2015. That doesn't make any sense when I'm doing a search. What is 2020? A lot happened in 2020. Well, a lot happened really. But regardless, that doesn't give any clarity to a thought name if it was just named 2020. I'm going to use the comma trick. So if I say comma 2010, notice that the thought, when it appears under Zion, it's in context. In 2010, I went to Zion, and that 2010 thought is going to have notes on all the hikes my families took and where we stayed and what restaurants we went to and so forth. But the full thought name is Zion 2010. By adding the comma, while I was creating the thought, it appended the parent name to the thought that I just created. So when I go to Zion again in 2015, comma 2015, now I'm going to use the semicolon trick, which I hope you're aware of. It allows you to add, sorry about that, multiple thoughts at one time. So semicolon, comma 2020. So I added these two thoughts, but there's clarity. Zion 2020, Zion 2015. If I went on hikes, I go on a lot of hikes on my family adventures. If I had a thought called hike for every national park that I went to and took a hike, I'd probably have over 100 thoughts just named hike. And if I did a search for the word hike, I got a little bit of work to do to find the right thought that I'm looking for. So here again, I can say comma hikes. These are hikes that I went on in Zion National Park in 2020, as opposed to this hike thought, comma, hikes. There, I capitalized it. These are hikes that I went on in 2010. And once again, if I do a search for hikes, I've got my 2020 hikes and my 2010 hikes. There's clarity because of that comma trick. I typically don't use the comma trick beyond like 3 thoughts. You know, if I use the comma trick for everything, then a thought name 10 or 20 generations down would be Matt, hobbies, parks, Zion, and it would just go on and on. Yes, this is all about me and parks, but I just need to know that Zion National Park 2010 hikes. Beyond that, I would actually have the name of the hike. Angel's Landing was one of the names. So here I can clearly see I went on Angel's Landing hike with my family, Zion National Park in 2010. So that is the comma trick. Now, something to keep in mind is if you forget to use the comma and want to add it in later. So let me just really quickly create a new child thought under Zion. Let's say we're planning a new trip in 2025. And oops, I did not add the comma trick. And once again, the disadvantage there is if I'm doing a search and I happen to come across, there's a thought called 2025. What does that mean? Why is that in my brain? There's no clarity. So I want to add the comma trick in. Since I've already created the thought, I simply need to manually type in the thought name, the parent name. So Zion, and the comma can come before or after, so it can be called 2015 Zion, comma Zion, or Zion, comma 2015. Regardless, it's still gonna work. I manually type it in, and then the comma trick becomes effective. And here is a really, really neat feature of the brain. I doubt this is going to happen, but let's say Zion National Park decides to change its name. Wouldn't be the first time that's happened to a national monument or a national park. Let's say Zion decides they want to be called Utah National Park. I'm going to say Utah NP, Utah National Park. So I changed the thought name and hit enter. And the brain realizes, wait a minute, you've got Zion, the comma trick, in effect for 6 other related thoughts. So do you want to have the brain rename those for you? Yes, I certainly do. It's not called Zion anymore. It's called Utah National Park. So I click on rename and the brain renames all of those effective comma tricks for me. So there's just going in the background. I've got my thought renamed and clarity to all those existing thoughts that I was using with the comma trick. Now, the next thing that I want to share with you, there you can see it renamed. I just had to move my mouse cursor over them, Utah National Park. And the final thing that I want to share with you is that you can sync your brain and use your brain on multiple devices. I mention this always in my Brain 101 classes, and I mention using your brain on an iOS or mobile device. And now I realize we're over time, but I actually want to show you using your brain on a mobile device. So I've synced this brain up to the cloud, and now it's uploading all of its changes. And now I've got a little app. Let me open this really quickly. And then Chase, I'll send it over to you for QA. I realize we've gone a little bit over time here, but I am opening up. Let me first mirror my screen here. So I've got a little app so that you can see what I see. There it is. So here is my phone. And as you can see, if you see on the camera, this is my real phone. Anything I navigate to or click on is showing on the screen here. And I have the Brain app up and running. This brain is my real brain that I actually share in my Brain 101 classes, the desktop version, but here you're seeing it in the iOS version. So the full structure of the Plex is all there. If I click on one of my bike projects, my Schwinn Twin, down below, you can see down below are all the tools that I can use to, I'll start from the left. I can get back to my brain list. There it is. Tap on the brain thumbnail I want. The search, so moving my way over, I can do a search for brain name or thought names. I can go to my pins. I can make sure this brain is synced to the cloud. That's the next button over. I can get into my brain box. I can add new thoughts, delete thoughts, or open up my notes and attachments to easily access all of that data that I have for that thought right from my mobile device, so right from my phone. So that's the last thing that I wanted to share with you, is that everything that you put into your digital brain for your desktop, take it with you. Get it onto your iPad, onto your iOS device or your Android device for easy access to that particular brain anywhere you happen to go in the future. And with that, I've tried to get in everything that I wanted to cover today. We had a lot of information to share about the brain. Chase, I saw Chase had his hands full answering questions on the question panel. If you do have another 5 or 10 minutes, please do stay with us. If you need to jump off the call, we look forward to hearing from you. You can contact us at support@thebrain.com at any time. And a recording of today's webinar is available, will be available on our website. So you can watch it again at your own pace at any time in the future. And Chase, I'll hand it over to you. If you can turn on your mic and let me know what kind of questions we have.
Alrighty, first one up here was, is there a way to assign a custom order to thoughts in the Plex?
Yes, that is a great question. And you can do that in a number of different ways. Let's just go ahead and go into my personal life. And I'm going to go back to arranging my thoughts, arrange thoughts by thought name. But let's say I wanted to order these thoughts in a structure that's important to me. First and foremost are my pets. I really, really love my pets. And let's say I have some just medical information, pet medical, and I'll thought type that pet. But let's say that is the most important thought to me, my pet's medical info. And I wanted this thought to come first in the brain. And if I right click and go into arrange thoughts by type, that doesn't make it first. If I right click, arrange thoughts by, this would make it first, date modified or date created. So date modified, hey, it's first. Oh, it's still not first in the list. If I click on the thought, I have to modify the thought, actually modify the notes. So that's no guarantee. I'm going to modify something else. So therefore, the best option to do is start numbering thoughts. And even beyond that, we have a hidden ordering system, which is even better. So yes, I could say my pet information, pet medical. I could just say thought one. And I need to make sure that I right click and arrange thoughts alphabetically by name. So that is going to make my pet medical first. But then I have a bunch of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. I don't want that. So I'm going to use the brain's hidden ordering system. I'm going to modify this thought one more time. I'll alt click. And if you put the dot in front of the number, so dot 1 is pet medical. And notice the number 1 doesn't appear, but pet medical is first in my list. I love kayaking. It's a really important part of my life, kayaking and biking. I want these thoughts to come next. So next comes kayaking. I'm going to alt click. Now, I typically, yes, I could put 2, 3, 4. What if something comes along in the future and I like it better than kayaking? I've got to rearrange everything beyond number 2. So I like to leave myself a little bit of wiggle room. So I'll say dot 5 for kayaking, dot 5. And that is going to place kayaking second in the list. Like I said, I love biking. That's going to be dot 10. So I skip by 5s. Seems to be a simple standard process for me. And biking will then come third. And like I said, I decide I like something more than kayaking, food. I'm going to alt click and squeeze this in by naming it dot 3. Whoops, dot 3, enter. And that'll just bump recipes in between pet medical and kayaking. So the hidden ordering system in the brain is a really great way to specify how you want your data structured. I use that quite a bit. We use it even in business applications, procedures that you need to follow, and I want to make sure they fall in the right order. Step 1, call the customer. Step 2, log a report. Step 3, document with photographs and so on. So you've got those procedures you need to follow. The hidden ordering system is a great way to go.
Alrighty, and next up we have one here. Is there a way to set a custom wallpaper for the Plex?
Absolutely. So you probably saw that I had the custom wallpaper of the whale. That was a theme that I went ahead and saved because I like it so much. Custom wallpaper is a really great way to make the brain your own. And today is all about editing, modifying your brain, and really highlighting your data, your structure, getting it reorganized and focused. What better way to actually make your brain a reflection of you, your business, your project, than to modify the wallpaper or the theme, all the different colors of the links, the colors of the thoughts, and so forth. So the best way to do that, and you saw when I created a new brain, one random theme is selected for me, but here I can go into options and brain theme. A Mac user would click on the brain and then go into the brain theme. And these are all the built-in wallpapers, and some of them come along with the brain. Some of these I created on my own. But you can always go into, here, let's go to sort of standard, but I'm gonna go into options. I like the colors, nice blue links. Everything's nice and clean, but I'm going to select a different wallpaper, And I believe on my C drive, I've got a wallpaper folder. Since I talked about Zion today, there's Bryce Canyon. Oh, these clouds might be nice. I'll just pick the clouds. There we go. So it's just a nice reflection of the subject matter of the brain. If I want to change these, I actually like these links. I like this very much. But regardless, if I wanted to, I can right click on the background, go back into the brain theme. And if I want my links just to really stand out a little, I'll go from light blue to bright yellow. So you can really play around with all these different custom settings to find something that works for you. And since I've modified my brain, when I go into brain theme, I have the option to save that theme. So I can save this as clean sky. I like to give them sort of a fun name. And that way I can go to another brain and give that brain the clean sky theme. Same wallpaper, same color coding of thoughts and so forth. So really, really, really great way to make the brain your own.
Great. And then another quick one here that was pretty popular today. Can you create a link to thoughts in other brains?
You certainly can. That's a really, really great question. And there are many different types of ways to link to content within the brain. I shouldn't say many different ways. There are a couple of different ways. Each thought in your brain has its own URL, a local thought URL, and if you've synced your brain to the cloud, you've got a web thought URL. But let's say I decide that here in this area of my brain, I've got my pet information, right? Maybe I want to ask my vets about this pet food that my company is developing. I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy the local thought URL. Oh, I'm in the brain with that, so that's okay. I've copied the local thought URL. I'm going to jump over to my Just Me brain, and under Just Me, maybe I've got my business. And under business, I've got pet food research. And from here, I want to link to my vet information, which was in that other brain. Maybe this brain has different vet information. I want to link to that vet's thought that I just copied the local thought URL for. So I right click and notice there's an option to paste web link. The brain pretty much always knows what you've got on your clipboard, whether it's an outline, an image. Here it's a link to another thought in another brain. And the brain follows a very simple rule. It launches attachments in their native application for your system. So the native application for a brain link is the brain application. So when I launch this attachment, it's going to take me directly to the vet's thought in another brain. We've got a lot of users that have multiple smaller topic specific brains, and then they create this primary brain of links to their brain that they have for medical research, for biotech research, for science research, or what have you. So they've got a brain with thoughts that link out to smaller topic specific brains. Very, very cool way to achieve links between thoughts. And of course, the other one is the web thought URL. So if I capture that, I right click and I'm going to copy the web thought URL. Then from another brain, I'll call this the web link and paste it down below. And this is not going to launch the vet's thought, oh, darn it, it launched on another browser. Let me pull it up. There, it just launched. And so it takes me to that thought on the web. So your web thought URL and your local thought URL allows you to link thoughts in brains to one another. And any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you got time for one more here.
Okay, great.
Can you attach a file created outside of the brain while leaving it in its original location on your hard drive?
You certainly can. There are many different ways to, and today, once again, like I said, that's something that we cover in the Brain 101. But just to make it perfectly clear, you can link to files, you can move files into your brain, or you can copy them into your brain. So let me open up a sample directory here real quickly. And the default setting, I changed my default setting. So when I drag and drop into the brain, I'm moving that content into the brain. So here's my iStock PDF, and I'm gonna drag and drop into the brain, and it has moved. Notice iStock PDF is no longer there. I've moved that file internally into the brain. Now it's a PDF, so it loads up right there in the content window. That's what works for me. The default setting in the brain when you drag and drop is to make a copy. So then I'd have two iStock PDFs, one in the original location and one in the brain. I can get to either one. If I'm running the brain, I'll go to the brain version. If I'm in my file and folder directory, I'll go to that one. That's the default setting so that you don't accidentally move or think that you have deleted content. You can also create shortcuts. So you drag and drop and you just have a link. Nothing is internal in your brain. It's just a link to the file. So if the file changes in the future, is modified or updated by someone else, you're just linking to that file and you open up the latest version. Now, to decide how your brain is going to behave, you click on Options and go into Preferences. Mac user, once again, would click on TheBrain Preferences. And on the Behavior tab, you can specify when I drag and drop, I'm going to move, copy, or link. And you can come back and change this at any time. So you're moving, copying, or linking. So I'll change mine to say link, since I think that's what the question was requesting. They just want to link to an existing file. Maybe this is a shared directory. Other people might be modifying this design requirements document. So when I drag and drop into the brain, it created a shortcut. There's a little black arrow icon that you may see there on the Word logo, and that's telling me it's just a link, a shortcut back to that file. The disadvantage here is that if I sync this brain to the cloud and open this brain from my iPhone or from another device, I won't have this file in the same location as it exists on this desktop machine that I'm using. Now, if it's linking to something on your O drive, for example, and all of your other machines have access to the O drive, then it's going to work great. It's going to work fine. And you can play around with that and find out what works best for you. And you can even have a mix. Some files are shortcuts, some files are internal attachments. I can right click and move or copy a shortcut into a brain, or go to an internal attachment and move or copy a file out of the brain as well. And there are keyboard shortcuts. So yes, my brain right now is set to link to a file. Here I've got this Making Choices PowerPoint. I'm going to drag and drop, but I'm going to hold down the Shift key. It's a keyboard shortcut to move that file internally into the brain. So a lot of different options within the brain, and they're all there really so you can decide what's going to work best for your process, your existing business process. How are you going to bring data into the brain and keep it there? And with that, unless there's another urgent question, Chase, I think we're going to cap things off. I want to thank everyone for joining me today for the Brain 202. I hope that you've learned some new features of the software that are going to take your usage of the Brain software to the next level. We're always available, support@thebrain.com. We'd love to hear from you if you have further questions in the future. And once again, if today was a little fast-paced, there were some advanced features that you didn't quite catch on to or fully understand, please join me for the Brain 101. We have those classes every Friday, and we review the basic features of the Brain application to help you make sure you've got that strong foundation of creating thoughts, adding attachments, syncing it to the cloud, and taking your data with you everywhere you go. Thanks again, everyone, for joining today. You'll receive a thank you email with a link to the recording of today's webinar. And once again, we'd always love to hear from you, support@thebrain.com in the future if you have further questions. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And as always, enjoy using your brain. Bye.